Hello, everyone. Since it's Friday, I wanted to do a live stream because it's been a weird week of bizarre stuff for me at work, bizarre stuff in the news, and just bizarre stuff in life in general. So, while we're still in February, which is my favorite month of the year, not only because of my birthday, but because it's only 28 days, it just comes and goes. It's like February's here, and then we get to move on to March, and spring training comes up pretty soon. Baseball, if you're not, it's a sports ball thing, happens and anyway.
Yes.
So I wanted Bill Sylvie to come on to talk about a couple of things. One is uh, using social media to get a message out, and Bill has a very specific message that he likes to talk about. The other one is growing a small channel, and the third one, which I think is the point to all social media, is be social and engagement with your audience. Not just there are some bigger accounts that love to do what they call post and ghost, where they kind of post things and they disappear and they never talk back to their audience. They never even look at the comments. They don't even care. And then there's people like Bill who wants to talk to everybody in the comments all the time, right? Which is
I
maybe not
try to.
everybody's the right answer, but it's somewhere in between the two is probably the right response. So, Bill, why don't you tell everybody about your channel on YouTube and what it is you try to do and who you are, all that kind of
Sure,
fun
Tim.
stuff.
My name is Bill Sylvie. I go by the nom de guerre, the Dungeon Delver. I've been hanging out on the internet, doing that since 2000. I've been on the internet a lot longer, but the Dungeon Delver was born on a bored workday back in the year 2000. I started my YouTube channel in 2014. Uh, Primarily as a place to share videos about classic Dungeons and Dragons, first edition, advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and original Dungeons and Dragons, basic D&D. If you're of a certain age, if you're a Gen Xer, it's the D&D we grew up with in the 1970s and 80s, and um, I thought, the supported version, which when I started was third edition, not 3.5, third edition D&D. It seems to soak up all of the love and all of the attention. So why don't I fly the flag for classic D&D? So I started just on the web with a tiny little website, 3 megabytes of storage space from my internet provider. But when I got over onto YouTube, I kind of tried to do regularly scheduled updates. My style maybe wasn't the best. My equipment and my editing software certainly wasn't. But I made a game go at it and just kind of drifted along as one of the various pieces of YouTube flotsam. And then, after, of course, human malware hit in 2020, and I saw so many of my friends who um, were on social media, their thing, their night out, their get-togethers with friends and so on, was playing Dungeons and Dragons, regardless of what version they were playing. And suddenly, we were being told by the NIH, the WHO, federal and local governments that we had to stay in our houses, that things were just closed indefinitely. And so many people that shut them off from the world. And I said, well, equipment be darned. I'm just going to grab my camera and I'm going to talk to people, because by this point, for a number of years, I had been playing D&D with a wonderful group of people, and I still am, online. We had come up with a system when we started trying to use Skype, which I hear is supposed to shut down in May.
Yep,
Um,
it's going
we
away in favor of Teams.
Yeah, we had started using Skype. We even tried the audio chat system built into the Steam video game Left 4 Dead. I'm not making that up. But eventually we settled on Discord. And so we had a pretty good handle on how to game online with friends, because I didn't want anyone, I mean, screw editions, I didn't want anyone of any stripe to feel like they were cut off from the world, that they were locked in, that they were shut away, and that they would never get to talk to their friends. So I would just sit there, and sometimes it was only one or two people watching me on Facebook originally, because hey, 2020 Facebook is the place to be, right? So
Well, the numbers still say a lot of people are there, but
people. But
yeah,
anyway, so I and I noticed people were listening. And again, some days it was only one or two people, or three or four, but I didn't do it to create a brand, not in 2020. I did it because people were hurting and I wanted to help people. And so I was like, uh, uh, hey, anybody out there ever wonder what's in an original D&D box set? Well, here it is. And, I open it, and the more I went, the more people just started to tune in and to listen. And there were some creators on Facebook, and when I say creators, I'm talking about people that created Dungeons and Dragons. Um, and I reached out to them, and I said, hey, if I can figure out a way that you and I can video conference and I can stream that to people, would you be a guest on my show? And so I talked to TSR luminaries. I talked to friends who created, and it just kind of built up a head of steam. And then I started figuring out better audio and video solutions than the one I was using. And with some help from a great friend, I got a much better camera and some studio lights set up, and I started doing more pinned down and dedicated streams. And for a while, I was streaming both to Facebook and to YouTube. Now, because of technical issues, that Facebook was basically kind of throwing some roadblocks that were making it harder and harder to do that. I migrated all the way over to YouTube, and so I started doing my streams on YouTube. And from 2020, or from 2021 to 2023, I slowly and steadily built up an audience. March of 2021, I crossed that golden line from less than 1,000 subscribers on YouTube to more than 1,000 subscribers. And then over the course of a couple of years, it just kind of gradually built up. And I remember, and this is an important date, in late December 2022, I was sitting at around 1,500 subscribers on YouTube, and I said, I jokingly posted to social media, I said, hey, I'm at like 1,513. 13's an unlucky number. I'd like to go into the new year with more than that. And a few people subscribed to the channel. It was just kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing. And then something happened in January of 2023. I started doing videos on that news in the tabletop RPG space. I went to bed with still less than 1,600 subscribers after I dropped a couple of newsy videos about some serious PR and design mistakes that Wizards of the Coast had made. And I woke up the next morning and I had close to 3,000 subscribers. And I was utterly floored. And you mentioned that I like to try and to respond to people. I looked in the comments on these videos, and I opened the comments tab in the workspace for creators in YouTube, and I started trying to respond to them. And as soon as I would get a page responded, it would fill back up. And I was desperately trying to respond to all these people who were saying, this is important news. Thank you for letting me know. Subscribed, or I agree with you, or I don't agree with you, or I agree with you partially. And I mean, this was months of Wizards of the Coast making really bad PR bungles and doing things that were impacting the entire hobby, whether you play classic D&D, out of print D&D, or whether you were playing and creating 5th edition stuff. They were constantly making serious mistakes. And I would read the news on Kotaku. I would see links from within Wizards' office posted on social media, and I would just aggregate those things. And I would say, "Here's some more news, guys. What do you guys think?" And it just started this crazy whirlwind. I was still doing my live streams the day after the big news broke, and I dropped a video on it. My live stream, and this was only on YouTube. This was before I was streaming to X. My live stream peaked out at around 300 people in the stream. I was flabbergasted. My co-host, who lives down in Australia, was like private messaging me saying, "Don't try and respond to people in the chat. I will talk to people in the chat. If you just keep talking." Just keep talking about what you're talking about. You will get buried if you try and keep up with the chat messages.
If you're trying to talk and chat at the same, I've never successfully met anybody who knows how to type and talk about something at the same time.
Yeah.
Because you either basically say what you're typing or type what you're saying. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
But you said a couple interesting things I want to drill into a little bit.
Okay.
So I have people approach me all the time because I do own a social media company, and we're not talking about that today, so don't worry about that. But I have people come to me all the time and say, "Hey, look, you got to have all this equipment to start a live streaming service. You got to buy thousands upon thousands of dollars of stuff." And you really don't. So a couple of things you want to do, and I'll let you address this. I think, in my opinion, you need a decent laptop at best, maybe a desktop, whatever, some method of getting to the internet. You need a camera that is at least 1080p, because the different platforms do downgrade you if you don't have the right resolution, and they want to see better, prettier pictures, which usually means I shouldn't be on the screen. But also, that's pretty much it. But what I see a lot of channels make a mistake of, and you're not one of them, is they're basically a channel say, "Hey, look, I saw this other video this other guy was talking about, and let me tell you what he said." You're going out and like finding the stuff at these little esoteric sites that people may or may not go to, and finding the data out, or finding information that people may want to, and then sending it to social media. Because Kotaku is known amongst gamers, and we go look at it, but I don't look at it every day, and I'm a pretty avid gamer. But I look at social media every day, right? So you were looking at these little spots and going and grabbing the information you think people might care about and bringing it over to social media, which is an interesting way to do it. Because if you're deep in a hobby, and you want to bring that message out to people, they may not know to go look there, right? And you had to go find it and bring it out and put it on social. So it's you took from you're like one of the more hardcore gamers. You went from the hardcore gamers, and you're putting it in a way that not all the casual play. You're putting it in a way the casual players would understand.
Yeah, and that was what shocked me, was so much of the feedback that I was getting during the Wizards of the Coast, the OGL crisis, and that's a whole rabbit hole I probably won't go down. But so many people leaving comments saying, this news is important. Thank you for telling me this. I didn't know about this. I was going to start trying and sell my stuff on D&D Beyond. You're bringing important news to me. Thank you. Subscribed. Keep doing this, please, And so that, in addition to my message to people to stay positive, now, granted, 2023 is, basically the end of lockdowns. But I was like, hey, if I can get this news out here, then so be it. Now, no company constantly, continually, forever makes unending PR bungles. We might not like what a company does, but eventually somebody will be sent from downtown, if you get that reference. Somebody will be sent from downtown to clean up the office. And so the headlines, they gradually slowed down and people calmed down. And so, you know, I had to, I couldn't drive my channel on outrage bait, you know. Oh, Wizards of the Coast, they painted their office magenta. Does Wizards of the Coast hate other colors?
Yeah,
You know,
and that's one of the things I think that serve for short-lived channels. So if you look at the industry as a whole, you can get a channel that lives and breathes on hate, and some of them grow to be super massive. There's some out there that do that, but in general, people who are more what I like to call evergreen content, like, ooh, here's today's rage of the day. It'll get 1 million views and then nobody will ever look at it again because that was yesterday's rage and we've got a whole new one today. So you have to continually kind of up the ante. So with your content, a lot of it is older edition D&D, how, like you and I did a couple of videos on how different monsters have evolved over the editions, right?
good fun.
So we were looking at, oh, how was the owlbear back at the beginning and how was the owlbear today? And I'm still kind of upset that it lost its hug attack, but that's a whole different story. But those kind of content are what I tell people, that's really what you should, if you're trying to grow a channel, that's really the stuff that lives and breathes forever, right? Because if I go post about whatever's going on in Washington, D.C. today, it has a lifespan of about 45 seconds because people will move on to another problem tomorrow. Whereas content like that, where it's people in the hobby space or somebody trying to build a channel in whatever your hobby is, that kind of content lives and breathes a very long time. So if somebody out there is a new YouTuber, you know, I would urge them, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether you focus on the outrage of the day, that does help, or whether you also focus on those sort of evergreen moments of things that kind of live and breathe.
So just before we mention that, I do want to address one thing about the tech. You are absolutely right. Anyone who's out there listening to this, please don't be taken in by this nonsense you see around me.
That was Bill's basement before he did streaming. Okay,
the first half. Well, I'm in Florida, so it's a garage. There's a 6-inch step down from the foundation. That's about as basementy as we can get here. But this is the camera I used to do my streaming with. This is now about a $40 camera, and it is a Logitech 920C. And
I've
it
got
was
the,
my. Go ahead.
I've got the $90 version of it right there.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, and Tim looks fine on it. I had a benefactor donate to the show the Panasonic Lumix 4K capable DSLR camera that I don't know how to use 90% of. But that is my primary camera, and I certainly enjoy it. And yes, you can tell I have studio lights, and you know, I've got a boom with a mic on. Guys, you don't need this stuff. If you want to talk about something you love, whether it's D&D, scrimshaw, auto repair, woodworking, bushcraft, cooking, macrame, sports, whatever, an iPhone, a prepaid iPhone will get you off the ground and get you going. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
And if you want to upgrade, like I actually went out, I was using my Mac microphone for a long time, or the ones that are in my headphones, and they weren't quite doing the job. Not because they weren't good microphones, but because I have kids and the noise canceling wasn't all that great. So I upgraded to an Audio Technica, one of these guys. I think it was $40 on Amazon, not breaking the bank. But now it's to the point where it's got such good noise canceling because the tech has come so long. If you actually pivot it a little bit in one direction or the other, it almost doesn't pick me up because it's so good at canceling things from the side. So you don't have to go spend tens of thousands of dollars. Kind of just read a bunch of reviews of the $40, $50 technology, and you can find this stuff all over the place for next to nothing.
Oh yeah. So, but to go back to what you were saying about outrage bait and clickbait is, although I do want to address just real quick, when people say, "Oh, this is just clickbait," of course it is. I want you to click. Exactly. You know, if I put up a video, I want you to click on it. That's what I want you to do. Everything I do is clickbait, but there's not a sharp hook in there. It's just a tasty morsel. I won't come in and say, put up a video that says, Wizards of the Coast is finished. It's over for Hasbro's company, Wizards of the Coast, because they misshipped one box of Magic the Gathering cards to a store. And that store has said, I don't know if we're going to buy directly from Wizards of the Coast. We're going to go to a distributor. That is clickbait, and that is outrage bait. And that's not, that is both sustainable and not sustainable. People like to have their outrage dopamine fed. They already dislike something, and they want affirmation that they are correct in their dislike. And so when they see something that feeds into that, they will click watch, or they will stop scrolling and read it and give it a heart or a thumbs up or 100% emoji in response before they move on. We are going to hit a point where I think that's not going to be sustainable.
Interestingly, you should bring that up. So, being in the business, I follow what the algorithms do on all the different platforms, right? YouTube specifically. Hi, YouTube guys, we love you. I promise. I'm not saying anything bad. I'm saying good things about you. That feeding the algorithm, God there. Right. YouTube has been very open about the fact that they're working on getting better at suppressing clickbait articles. What I mean by that is if you put something in the thumbnail or put something in the description and it isn't in the video, because oftentimes I'll find clickbait that the description or the thumbnail has absolutely nothing to do with what's in the video. They're completely separate. They are suppressing those posts, and other platforms are starting to follow suit with that. So I think a lot of those are going to go away. Now, the clickbait, the rage bait that's out there, I think eventually those same platforms are going to try to suppress a bit also. For instance, pick your poison, right? So, orange juice, right? Because I've had people yell at me about orange juice. I like orange juice, right?
It's delicious.
It's delicious. Fantastic stuff, right? People, orange juice producers don't want you to know it's full of sugar. I know it's full of sugar. That's why I drink it, because it tastes good. But it's, I'm not going to do a 10-minute video about how they're lying to you. It's not as healthy. That's the rage bait we're talking about, where people will take a tiny little thing and blow it way out of proportion and say it's the end of orange producers as we know it, right? That's not how it works. So the other thing that you'll find on the social side is that, on the social media side, is one of the things about that rage kind of post that hits, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is you don't get engagement. And when you get engagement with your audience, you have sustained growth over a long period of time. Social media is not a sprint. It is a marathon. And you eventually hit these plateaus that you'll then crash through and grow quickly. Then you'll hit a plateau and you'll crash through and grow quickly. It just happens. But I've also seen accounts blossom to be a couple 100,000 subscribers, and then 6 months later they quit because they're getting 4 views per video because their subscribers didn't care anymore after they got rage baited 20 times, right? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on interacting to and listening to your audience and being sort of that. Does it help you to actually understand what it is your audience is enjoying, or that sort of thing, in a way to help you kind of grow your platform and keep driving you to do this 5 nights a week?
It really does. Now, I do my live streams, and I made an evangel. I made a testament when I started doing this in 2020. I said, if there is one person out there who is lonely and just needs another human voice, a live person saying, I too like D&D, and you're not by yourself, I would still do this. And I mean that. And the live streams are really the thing that I do. Now, my channel would probably grow a lot faster if I did 10-minute news bites all the time. Like if that was my content. But you have to listen to your audience, and that is there's twofold reasons for that. YouTube will not brook deviation from the groove that you carve for yourself once you hit a point where you are generating content. Now, I've said this before because this always throws people for a curve, but my favorite stuff to unwind, my moment of zen, my happy place on YouTube, outside of the TTRPG YouTube creators realm, and there are many wonderful ones out there, is car restoration. I love car resto videos, guys that find. I swear, Tim, I saw one the other day. These guys pulled a Ford Gran Torino out of a field that was the body and the frame. It had no rear end, and it had an engine block, and that was it. 2 days later, they drove it 400 miles home, and they wow. did it in a garage. It was bonkers. There was another Torino in the field that had a rear end. So they just dragged a jack out in the field, jacked it up, took that rear end, put it on the other one, rebuilt the engine, bolted a new front end on it, and drove it home. It was bonkers. I love that kind of content. If I lost my marbles and bought a junked car and brought it home, well, the first thing I have to do is fix up the living. But
sorry, I pushed the wrong button for a second, but we got it all fixed.
But if I said, hey, I'm going to document this on the Delver's Dungeon channel, I'm going to do a car resto video because Junkyard Digs and Pole Barn Garage and Dylan McCool and Vice Grip Garage, they get millions of views on car resto videos. YouTube would drop me like a hot rock. And I would wager most of my audience that I have struggled to build would not watch those videos. Maybe probably some people are like, oh, I would watch anything you do, Bill. Would you watch me tinker with a car for an hour in a video and just talk gearhead stuff? I kind of doubt many people would. Not because it's not an interesting subject, but the YouTube algorithm machine, their soft AI and their expert systems that decide where to put stuff. And it benefited me. I had people telling me that they, and it, I don't want to mention names. Someone we both know spun up a virtual machine on his desktop, did not log into YouTube, just opened YouTube and looked. There were a couple of days during the OGL crisis, my stuff was getting featured on the front page of YouTube.
Wow.
That was amazing. I had one or two videos that actually got out that far. But if I did the car resto thing, regardless of how much I love it, YouTube would say, I don't know what to do with you anymore, Bill Sylvie. You're not talking about D&D and your audience isn't engaging with this. We're just going to not bother promoting you that much because you're not big with the car resto people and you're losing your D&D audience. So, yeah, sorry.
The only way you could talk about cars, because the way that algorithm works is it would kind of look at you as more like a pop culture-y kind of space in the gaming world.
Yeah.
If you talked about cars when it comes to like movies or video games, you could kind of get away with it. And when it comes to resto stuff, you couldn't.
Like so if I saw someone with a 70s van with a Frazetta airbrushed picture on the side and the owner didn't mind, I could click pictures of that. I could share that online. I could talk to the guy. But yeah, let's talk about the engine. Let's talk about the inline six-banger you got in there. YouTube's just going to go, no. So to answer the question...
As a 1 minute car aside, I have to point something out. So Gene Hackman passed away recently, right? We all kind of had that problem.
I think I know where this is going based on the thumbnail you put up.
Yeah, I've been watching Hackman movies for 2 days just because I wanted to watch them. I'd forgotten in Loose Cannons he was driving one of the coolest cars like in the history of cars.
God, that
Woody.
That tore my heart out.
Yeah, I keep I was watching the movie. I'm like, I think they wrecked a real one to make that movie, and that just makes me sad in a lot of ways.
I know for a fact that they did because we went to Universal Studios here in Orlando one year. My wife and I did, and they have Hollywood backlot areas at Universal Orlando, and the rather seriously damaged Woody was sitting, and there's a little plaque there. You know, this Woody station wagon featured in and
Loose Cannons.
Loose Cannons, yes.
Yeah, which co-starring Dan Aykroyd was a great, and Dom DeLuise. I'd forgotten.
Yeah, it's an odd collection of people in that movie, but it works somehow.
Yeah, Dom DeLuise with a machine gun is not to be missed.
Yeah.
But I won't say what his job was in that particular movie, just because it's YouTube and the algorithm would be mad at me.
Yes. You got to watch that. I
Yeah,
always
you watch
joke
that
that
a
when
little
people super chat me on my live streams, I get to say a dirty word because the demonetization is buffered by their super chats.
It happens. So that's another thing I wanted to talk a little bit about with somebody who's been down this road. So, I deal with in my day job a lot of people who are starting as influencers or starting as trying to build a channel to do something, right? And one of the things I tell them is you can't just be spam. You can't just be like, "Ooh, I've got a book. Buy my book. Buy my book. Buy my." That's nobody's going to pay attention. You have to be social. You have to talk about what books influenced you, all that kind of thing. But then I've had several people do this too, where they'll start an Instagram account, throw up a post, and then like a day later, email me, go, "How do I know how much I made on my post?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's not how this works, right?
That's not how that works.
It's not how it works at all." And every platform is different. So one of the things that comes up a lot is, how do I know where I'm going to get the best monetization deal? And the answer is, personal opinion, you really don't. The second opinion is be as many places as you can. That way, if one changes the rules, which they all have a tendency to do, you're kind of spreading that risk out across different spots. And since you are monetized here in probably X or at least there.
No, I submitted everything, but I haven't heard back from them.
They're running really behind. But now, at least on YouTube, you are. And, you can make a few bucks at it, right? But unless you grow to be the size of like Critical Role, you're not going to make retirement money at this sort of thing. So you want to talk about that whole process a little bit? Because I think there's some steps to that people might not necessarily know all that well.
So monetization on YouTube can be kind of a confusing thing. I actually, when I started my YouTube channel, my intention was, because back after Google bought it, before an event called the Adpocalypse, which briefly, a lot of advertisers were unhappy with the content that their ads were going on, and it forced YouTube to look at a lot of small content creators because YouTube was just flipping the switch and letting ads go on everything willy-nilly. A 3-minute video done by an 11-year-old girl about her favorite Pokemon was, getting a DeVry University ad on it, and that sort of thing. And they're like, what are we really spending our money on? And it was getting put on a lot of questionable content too. So YouTube basically went in and they changed a lot of monetization rules. I didn't realize they'd done that, and that you couldn't just jump on YouTube and flip on the thing that says, yes, monetize me, send me money, YouTube. Because they were like, I had to wait until I hit 1,000 subscribers to turn on AdSense. I believe it's changed since 2020, and it's now you can take super chats at 500, which basically super chat is you stick your tip jar out and folks can in the chat, there's a little dollar symbol that they click, and they have to have.
But there's a second part to that. You have to have 3,000 watch hours as well as 500 subscribers.
Yes, you have to have 3,000 watch hours, 500 subscribers. You can turn on super chats and people can do super thanks and likes and send emojis. Basically, they can just fill up your tip jar for you a little bit.
Throw you a couple bucks. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
two, $3, $4, whatever it is.
I,
And people do it.
I have had incredibly generous super chats that just like, are you sure you meant to send that many zeros and not like your decimal shouldn't be? And no, it's very, very decent of people, and I appreciate it regardless of what it is. I've had people send me a $2 super chat. I appreciate that as much as someone who sends me a $250 super chat. It all helps. But so you have to have you have to have 3,000 watch hours. You have to have at least 500 subs to take those super chats. Now the other half of the equation, which is actually far less prominent for me, is what they call AdSense. And when I was talking about commercials being stuck on your videos, those pay a certain amount of money.
And that's 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours.
Exactly, 1,000 subscribers, 4,000 watch hours. You basically put yourself up for review by YouTube. They will decide, and it's about a 30-day process. I haven't heard of anyone who's just, YouTube has said, we're not going to do this for you. I have seen a lot of creators, big creators, who've said, yeah, I uploaded this video about the history of the Soviet Navy and it got demonetized. So I changed some things in it that YouTube said was wrong. And here's the video again. No, you're not going crazy. I took the original down and put it back up. And some of YouTube's decisions about why they do things can be very tricky. So when you hit the level of monetization and you go through the evaluation, and one thing you have to do, just as a pointer, YouTube will not pay to donation sites. YouTube will not send you your AdSense and your super chat money into Patreon. They won't send it to PayPal. They won't send it to you to GoFundMe. They want a bank account, an ABA number to send you. They'll send you a micro draft to make sure that it works. And you have to respond and say, yes, I got the 43 cents you sent me. And then they'll say, cool, you'll start getting your funds after this time. Here's the thing. If, let's say you get monetized, it's your first month, you get one $20 super chat and you're like, aha, at the end of the month, I'll get that super chat. And let's say it's the 22nd. And somebody super chats you $20 and you're like, cool. In a week, I'm going to get that $20. I can buy a pizza. Well, these days that's more like I can buy McDonald's just for myself.
I have two teenage boys. That's actually true.
But YouTube, first of all, they have a threshold, and it's $100. Mm-hmm. You have to make a minimum of $100 before they'll start sending you the money, and the money you're getting in a given month is from the previous month. So if you got monetized in January, and on January 28th, someone super chats you $100, you are not going to get that money until February 21st. Something else you need to know about YouTube's monetization, they take 30% of what you make. So let's go back to that $100. It hit the threshold. They will send you money. They will take $30 of it. You will get $70 of it. There are other websites like Rumble, I think. I'm not sure.
Twitch. There's some
Twitch that have more competitive rates. The problem with Twitch is, and Tim, you mentioned at the beginning of our live stream, they about hit as many places as you can. Twitch wants exclusivity. They do not like it when you
Yeah,
multi-stream. They will
they
shut you down.
they want to have it exclusive for a certain period of time, and then you can start to load it other places. But it's like some
Right.
period of time, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's not. I can't, like, this video stream we're on right now is going to 3 different platforms, right?
Yeah.
So you can't do that on Twitch. They get really persnickety about that sort of thing. So the rules are different everywhere.
Yeah. Now,
Twitch does have a different audience too, which is weird.
yeah.
But that's the other thing about a lot of these platforms, right? So each platform is a little bit different, right? You've got larger user bases on YouTube versus X versus Threads versus whatever, and the user base is a little bit different demographically speaking. You know, male, female, age range, whatever, kind of varies platform to platform. And like TikTok tends to be younger. X is predominantly male and older. Pinterest is predominantly female and a little, kind of Gen X and Gen Z, millennial kind of space. But it just depends on which one you're talking about. But so when you start a channel, you chose YouTube, which is I think you chose Facebook first, right? And you kind of switched over to YouTube. And YouTube, I think, is an interesting one for a couple of reasons. If you want to, let's go back up to the technology side a little bit. Because when people are looking for things to watch or they're looking for information on something, if you Google it, Google now indexes YouTube videos, right? So if I'm trying to understand something about first edition Dungeons and Dragons and I go Google it, you might show up as one of those top search results as a YouTube video, whereas Twitch doesn't necessarily get that, right? So when you go to some of those other platforms, you're not on a Google search result at the same level. You can Google, if you get really specific enough, you can kind of rig it so you can get a tweet or something to come up. But Google really does give preference to YouTube stuff because, surprise, surprise, they own it, so they kind of give it some preference. Shock here, I know. But that particular switch, I think, was actually a good move for you because not only did you get the YouTube larger base that watches videos versus Facebook that doesn't, you got the monetization, and you also got the indexing over at Google, which is a big deal, right? Because anybody can start a channel on anything. That's the beauty of it. Getting people to find it is the tougher part. So you've got to think through things like this, like where am I going to be indexed? How are people going to find me? How am I going to pop up to the top? You know, those sorts of things go through that mix. And you do an interesting job of cross feeding across different platforms. So you want to talk a little bit about that? How you kind of like put things on different platforms to say, hey, watch this over here, watch that over there.
Yeah. So now I'm going to put this out there, Tim, and if I'm wrong, I would like to hear from you because you don't just have your finger on the pulse of social media. You've got your hands in the gearworks, right? You've got the the hood open, and you're watching how all of the pulleys move and everything.
Yeah, we track my company tracks all the algorithms. We track how to get people to percolate to the top of those algorithms using some of the tools we built with predictive analytics and whatnot. So I really, he's not kidding. I really do kind of have at least insight into at least the top 8.
So it's been interesting. YouTube is an absolutely terrible place to try and interact with people in a text medium.
Oh,
I desperately try and keep up with the comments. You know, we had a loss today in our hobby. Gary Gygax's first son, Ernest Gary Gygax Jr., passed away today after a long battle with health issues. And I've had I simply, I know there are people who might not have heard that news. Same with anything else that I report on. I used YouTube to say, hey, guys, you know, a legend is gone. Someone who was part of the foundation of the hobby has passed. There have been so many comments underneath, so many sweet things people have said, sharing memories with Ernie, or sharing memories about times that they spent with Ernie, thanking me for letting them know and that sort of thing. Even a heartfelt, positive conversation beyond post and initial response on YouTube is terrible to try and thread through. YouTube, Google, I'm sorry, the comment system is a mess and it's unfixable, I think. But Twitter is 180 degrees around from that.
So we're actually working. So our third party app, honestly, oddly enough, we're actually working on pulling all the comments back off of YouTube videos so you can answer them over there. And I think our user interface is going to solve some of that problem. But it's a third party app.
I
right?
would like to see it. I would like to see that. But
Twitter is excellent for that conversation.
yeah,
Right?
X is 180 degrees around, and I can go over there and I can. You know, people will share their thoughts on various things, so it's kind of an interesting, dichotomy. But the thing that I want you to correct me on here is, and we'll do it live. Does Twitter, for lack of a better term, I want to be very careful when I use my terminology because I don't want to be misconstrued. Do they suppress YouTube links?
Twitter and Facebook and Instagram block any link. It's not just YouTube that takes you out of the platform. If you put it in the main post, if you put it in the first comment, it tends to slip through. But I'm anticipating over time, even that'll kind of go away. It's because what the algorithms are trying to do, the only purpose the algorithm serves on any platform is to make sure you stay on that platform as long as possible.
Of course. Of course.
That's its job.
And
right?
I mean,
so if there's a link that takes you out, they're like, I don't want to see that. Right. So
yeah, I mean, if you had a McDonald's franchise and the guy across the street had a Chick-fil-A franchise and people were coming in and buying quarter pounders, you wouldn't say, hey guys, you know what? Waffle fries are awesome. You should go get some waffle fries at Chick-fil-A and then come back and try them with the quarter pounder. It's a great treat. They're just going to go get a chicken sandwich, right? So I get it. I get it. So engaging about my YouTube channel, which is my primary thing, on Twitter has been a bit of a challenge. But now that I'm streaming to both, I keep saying X. I think everybody knows what I mean. Yeah. Now that I'm streaming to both, I'm finding the engagements a bit better, and I know the algorithm at Twitter is more than happy to tell people about streams that I do over there.
They are starting to push video.
Yeah.
Even I am monetized on X. I make a whole $15 every 2 weeks because of my monetization. I'm so glad that I can go to Starbucks twice inside 2 weeks with my X money. So it's not like I'm not making a fortune. Actually, it kind of pays for the blue check mark, basically. That's really all it does.
Right.
But the point is that they are internally making a large push to go to video and streaming video. They want to figure out how to incentivize people that are creators to come over to that platform and have it be just there. In fact, they've been actually actively trying to pull Mr. Beast over to do stuff over there. And of course, he's making so much money on YouTube, he's not going to leave, right? Just forget it. Right. But by the same token, they are looking to fix that problem on X and how to. The problem is their monetization thing right now is based on something else. So they're trying to figure out how to incentivize video creators to come over there and push that side as well. So that's going to shift over time. But X algorithmically in the last 6 months, 8 months, actually ever since it was purchased, it's been a moving target. Its algorithm has been all over the map. Its monetization standards ever since they started that program have been just a moving target. So yeah, trying to tell people, ooh, here's how you go be successful on X. It might be different in 2 weeks, right? Yeah, so you really have to keep up after it. I can tell you that if you, I'm trying to figure out how to say this carefully. It likes positive sentiment. Yeah. So they've got a pretty good sentiment analyzer over there that if you're constantly negative, it's not going to like you very much. They want to see positivity, and they're one of the better ones at starting to promote that. That being said, if you're negative about things that Elon doesn't like, you're going to get seen. So,
yeah. I mean,
their algorithm is weird. I could do an hour and a half on what to do to fix it, but they're not going to listen to me anyway. So,
yeah. So you touched on something, and I think this is really, really important for would be desire to be creators to know. A big field to get into, if you have an enjoyment of history, to get into on YouTube is historical videos. I hate to make this sound cheap and tawdry, but I promise I'm not. When in doubt, you can crack open Wikipedia. At the very least, you can follow links from there to secondary sources or the primary sources that they used, and then just talk about that if you're stuck for an idea.
So it's interesting you say that, because I tell people all the time, there is an audience for anything.
Yes.
Okay. And when I first started my company, my business partner didn't believe that. So I broke out my mother's old salt and pepper shaker collection, which my mother passed away, for anybody who doesn't know. It's been years now, but so she collected salt and pepper shakers. I lost the who got to take them home with them contest with my sisters. So they're at my house because nobody else wanted them. And I have 250 plus commemorative salt and pepper shakers for all kinds of things. To prove there is an audience for anything, anywhere, I started an Instagram page and posting little YouTube shorts of my mother's salt and pepper shaker collection, done as cheaply and stupidly as I could figure out how to do it. It gained an audience. I mean, like a big one. And it's salt and pepper shakers. Yeah. So there is an audience for anything if you're passionate about it.
But when you're tackling subjects of a social nature and historical nature, you need to brace yourself for some random shots being fired at you by the YouTube algorithm in a negative way. There's a period of history from 1933 to 1945, particularly concerning Central Europe and the nation between Poland and France. If you're passionate about that and you want to talk about that, you might as well just put up a Patreon, do early releases for your patrons, and say, that's how I'm going to make money, because YouTube, they're will
not going to like you very much.
That it can be the best channel in the world. You could go out and buy a red, which, if you know video production, when I say red digital camera, I'm talking about a $70,000 camera. A red camera, hire a production team, get some stentorian British history professor to actually read your scripts and so on. YouTube is not going to like you.
No,
there are just topics, and it's not just that. It's not just the mustachioed Austrian corporal that you have to that you have to contend with. There are just topics, and you can be like, What? I'm talking about the late Roman Empire. It's a minefield, unfortunately. I mean, I talk about silly shit. Pardon me. I talk about silly stuff.
By the way, he said, pardon me. Let's go back to that. That 4-letter word he just used is something that could get a video demonetized. It's that simple on YouTube's rules. Yes. So if you slip and say, oh, damn, right, that could get you could have a 3-hour video that has one of those in there. Boom, it's gone.
The first video I ever got put on caution, and this should tell you how long ago this was, because an actual person from YouTube interacted with me about it. When you hit a certain level, when you hit, 500,000, 750,000, million subs, you will suddenly find that there is a YouTube team member has been assigned to you. Yeah. And they will work with you because you're now making money for them. I lose money for YouTube. The only money that YouTube makes with me is when they take 30% of y'all's super chats. So YouTube, until or unless I manage to crawl up to the triple digits, the high triple digits, YouTube's going to do as little to help me as possible. But so I did a video about a war game, a role-playing game rather, called Twilight 2000, and it is set in the game was written in the 1980s. with the idea, because back then we didn't know, we were all Gen Xers in our 20s, our teens and 20s. We had no idea that the Cold War would end like 5 years, like 2 years after I graduated high school, 5 years after this game was written. So the idea was that the Cold War goes all the way to the year 2000, and then there's a limited war between East and West that results in the players of the game are stuck in a destroyed Europe and trying to get back home, or trying to make a home for themselves there. The game involves a lot of gunplay. It involves a lot of human misery. And the cover of the box features a group of very haggard-looking U.S. soldiers clutching their assault rifles as they stand on a grim, ashy background.
Yeah.
That got put on limited visibility, limited monetization. And I was like, oh my gosh, I must have, yeah, that's a pretty grim topic. So I filed an appeal. I got someone on YouTube because I was worried. I was like, what did I do? The video is like almost 3 hours long of me talking about the game. And I was like, ooh, was it because of the stuff with the guns? And I've talked about nuclear war and people dying in cities and stuff. And the person on the other end, God bless them, they were like, well, I tell you what, give me just a few minutes to skim through and let me see what I can do. They were genuinely interested. So I'm like, la, 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 and I'm going about my day. I get another message notification in the creator page in my YouTube channel. And the person said, actually, you said the word, and I can't repeat. It starts with a C. It rhymes with the word ant. 4 letters. So unfortunately, unless you change that at this time, we cannot. I was like, here I was worried that it was this high-minded, philosophical, like, oh, he's talking about war and death and destruction. No, I just dropped the C word.
So it's actually weirder than that, because I did a video that I took down eventually because it got like 2 views about the Avalon Hill game Rise and Decline of the Third Reich. Right. Because I was going through the book, I was going through the whole thing, and I was talking about it. This was a couple of years ago. The production quality was terrible because I'd never done a YouTube video. It was one of my first YouTube videos ever. It was me talking about this old game that I used to play with my dad and the memories of that. And I basically said, yeah, you can't, if you're going to play this game, be the Germans. The Germans are probably going to win. And it was all about World War II and how the German army was better, if at least in this game world. And how the Americans it got buried, right? So it just totally killed. So the algorithm, that's the other thing I tell people is if you're trying to start a channel or trying to get a message out, I don't care what your message is, there is an audience there. Don't fight the algorithm. Work within its rules, because it's not a fight you're going to win. Right? You can't say, oh, the algorithm is against me. Yeah, okay, sure. But its rules are there for a specific reason. If you work within that framework, you can overcome it and you can be seen. The fact that I got Salt and Pepper Shaker seen by, I think it was 500,000 people by the time I was done. It's a lot of Salt and Pepper Shakers, right? Yeah. And who cares? It's commemorative Salt and Pepper Shakers. But I have a ton of them. And people are like, oh, you could sell them. Like, yeah, they're worth like $6 a piece. Nobody cares. By the time I put it on eBay and ship it, I've probably lost money in the whole process because nobody wants to pay for shipping. And I refuse to do Facebook Marketplace. I just can't bring myself to deal with that. It's its own weird little world. So I have them. And my daughter loves them, so maybe someday she'll move out and get. My daughter's 12, so we're not talking about moving out soon, although I do hope she goes away to college. There is an audience for anything. You just have to kind of be careful within certain rules. So if you're talking about things that are, World War II related in a particular group, if you're talking about things that are hate speech, if you're talking about things that are, that would be socially unacceptable if you were talking about them at the mall, right? You get looked at funny. Those are things that the algorithms are probably not going to like. So you do have to keep that kind of stuff in mind, especially if you're kind of newer to the process. Once you get past 1 million subscribers or 500,000 followers or something, it's a little bit different world. But until you get to that point, you got to keep that stuff in mind because the algorithm does not necessarily favor smaller accounts. You've got to grow into that bigger account. And the only way to do that is to remember that it is, in fact, a marathon. Now, the one thing I wanted to take a moment, and you've never done it because I've looked at your accounts, is there, you will, as if you are trying to grow an account, you will be approached by people like, "Ooh, if you pay me $500, I'll get you 5,000 subscribers or followers."
Yeah.
Don't do it. Okay. Those are click farms out of either South America or India, someplace that are going to get you empty subscribers that are not going to interact with you. And every platform wants to see organic growth. That kind of growth with very inactive accounts following you is actually going to hurt you on all the algorithms. They've caught on to that game. So if you have accounts that are following you that aren't active or aren't very active, that is going to hurt you. So there's at some point it's inevitable and it's hard to avoid. It's impossible to avoid because some accounts just go stagnant. But organic growth is what they want to see. That's inorganic growth. That's purchase growth, and the algorithms have caught wind of that kind of stuff. So they really want to see organic growth. The other thing that they're starting to really backlash on, and I tell new people this all the time, X especially will hurt your account, ding you, and actually kick you off the platform if they catch you doing what they call platform manipulation. Okay. What that means is, hey, if you follow me, I'll follow you back. Hey, if you like my stuff, I'll like yours. That's platform manipulation. They are seriously going after that stuff across the board. YouTube, Instagram, everybody's going after it. You don't do it, which hats off to you because your engagement rate on YouTube is one of the highest I've ever seen. But so your growth is all organic, and it's great because that's exactly what you want to see for the marathon version of social media. So I think you're going to have success in the future. You have some success now, but I think you're going to be more and more successable as time goes on.
I'm out here building a YouTube channel out of scrap wood and chicken wire.
No, but you're also doing a Dungeons and Dragons thing, and role playing games are of interest to people because otherwise Critical Role wouldn't have the success they have. But you don't do table reads. You don't do, let's overreact to everything. You're doing the way people actually play the game.
That's my hope. And that's one thing you run into. We talked about no words on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Tim and I are playing, and some other great guys, by the way, I should point out. But Tim plays in my Tuesday night AD&D game, and we're going through a series of classic modules that involves a group of adventurers putting an end to human trafficking in AD&D. Now, I may have just screwed up Tim for the algorithm by even saying human trafficking instead of the S word.
That's one of them.
But I worry about that from time to time because I put the title of the modules in the thumbnail. I put the title of the modules in the video description, and we say the title of the modules on the stream and talk about the titles of the modules on the stream. So it's a very fine line to walk, and I hope that YouTube's algorithm is smart enough to know we are talking about a game where the traffickers are the bad guys, we the heroes are the good guys, trying to put a stop to them. So it can trip you up in the worst of ways, and when you don't expect it. But you mentioned bot. There's another got you because this came up. I think the summer my channel really exploded. Like the summer after that happened, when things began to cool down a little bit. Wizards of the Coast had a few months in 2023 where they weren't caught on film kicking the neighbor's dog, just for a few months. Then they finished off the year in stupid style too.
I think they kicked some puppies at the end of that year.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell Wizards of the Coast management at the end of 2023 when they started dropping all the layoffs, like, you realize Charles Dickens wrote a whole book about why this is a bad idea. But
it's like at some point you wanted to take them and just say, look, just stop talking. Right? Just
exactly.
Just be quiet for like a couple of days.
Yeah. So I had an advertiser reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, we have this mobile RPG, and today, if you start putting an ad, we will send you an ad. We will send you an ad read. Today, we will put this much money in your bank account." And I was like, holy cats, I have hit the big time. So I started looking at their website, and I reached out to a friend of mine who actually worked for Amazon AWS, and I was like, "Does this seem a little sus to you?" And he said, "Yeah, this seems very sus to me. Do me a favor. Tell them you're interested, but ask them if they can sit on a Zoom call with you. Tell them you love their game and you want to talk to all the programmers featured here on a Zoom call. If they won't do a video Zoom call with you, then all these are stock photos, and this is like a this is like a malware disguised as a game." And I actually saw one other creator, not even in the TTRPG space. I searched on YouTube for their game, and just days before, another creator on YouTube did a video about how he was approached by these people and how what they were doing was basically a data harvesting scam.
There's a lot of those out there. And working in the space, I keep track of, or at least try to keep track of, all the scams that are running around, and they're getting creative. They really are. I even get hit with them once in a while, where people are asking me like, "Oh, I saw your feed," but it's always a little bit off, right? So you talk about TTRPGs and they wanted you to talk about a video game. It's a little bit off, right? So that's your first hint. I get them every once in a while over on Instagram, because off and on I will post pictures of my dog, because it's Instagram and I have a dog, and that's just sort of what you do. And like, "Oh, your dog is so cute. Let us send you a bunch of free pet supplies and $500 to go off and advertise our pet supplies." That particular account is my personal one. I think it's got 800 followers. I'm like, yeah, okay, two problems here. You're paying me way too much to talk about dog toys with the number of followers I have, because you're not going to recoup that money, right? So the one thing I tell everybody is, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. It's just the way it works.
Listen, the girl at the end of the bar who wants to buy you a bunch of drinks, she's probably not interested in you. And the company that wants to they want to promote the hell out of you because you have a great channel and you're an up and comer and you're going to make thousands of dollars by the end of this month. But our services cost, we have an entry package plan that's just $750. If you'll pay us that, we'll tell you the secrets. No.
I had on that note, I'd left a job. For anybody who doesn't know, my PhD is not just me talking about whatever. It's actually in physics. I actually am a scientist. Worked at universities, defense contractors, venture space. I now own my own company. So there was a brief window when I wasn't working, right? And I put on LinkedIn that I was unemployed, because it was after I was doing a bunch of consulting. Human malware, otherwise known as COVID, hit. And I took a couple of months off to really not do much, because as a consultant, you wind up traveling a lot, and I wasn't going to do it. But I was kind of looking at starting my own company, which I now have, and I now own and operate, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. And that we're making money. But the point is that I had this company approach me like, "Oh, we can help you find a job." And this is what bothers me in down economies. Like, you get these people that are predatory, and they came to me and said, "Ooh, we're an employment service. And here, what we do is you pay us in two chunks. And we think we can find you a job making $400,000 a year," which was more than I'd made in my entire life. Right. And the fee is just 50% of your annual salary up front and 50% when you get a job. So they wanted me to pay him $200,000 to go help me find a job. And I'm like, my PhD's in physics. If I wanted a job with the resume I've got, I'd find one in about 10 minutes. That's not a big problem. But those predatory people are out there. They're all over the net, is the point. And if anybody wants you to pay, if you haven't heard of someone and they're asking you to pay them a bunch of money to help you out, they're probably not there to help you out. They're probably there to just suck off of you pretty hard, pretty fast, and then move on to the next person.
Soak you for and I think they probably tweak their targeting system. It's like a guy like me, they might say, yeah, we'll show you how to build a better YouTube channel, and we'll promote the hell out of your brand for how many subs has this guy got? $750.
Yeah.
Whereas they might go to somebody like I mentioned this guy before, the car resto guy, Junkyard Digs. He's got I think over 1 million subscribers. They might go, yeah, we'll promote your brand even more. You're growing, but you can grow so much faster for oh wow, for $10,000.
Exactly.
They'll vary it by creator to soak you for as much as they can.
And that's the sprint thing I was talking about, right? So there's no sprint in the social media space. It is all a marathon. So my company, we work with a whole bunch of people, including some retired professional athletes and otherwise. And here's guys that have multiple Super Bowl rings, right? And they're like, how do I grow on social media? And we'll work with them like, oh, but that's going to take a lot of time. I'm like, dude, I don't care that you're you. It still takes a long time to get to that space. And if you go look at the people who've been successful on social media, who build a big following, they are interactive, they are social, they are posting on a regular basis. It's not just infrequent, right? So go pick your favorite big one and go look at their account and kind of emulate it is really my best advice to people. So if you were going to talk to somebody, so I'm going to try to wrap up. Otherwise we can go all day because that's usually when Bill and I get started is usually like 2.5 hours. And
yeah, we have what we call Southern goodbyes after we stop streams.
Yeah.
And we talk for another hour.
But anyway, if you were going to talk to somebody who was just starting out and say, hey, look, here's the minimum package you need. Here's what you need to start. What would you give them advice on? And I want to hear about a couple things. One is we talked about equipment, but do you think how many videos should somebody have done before they start posting? And should someone actually sit down with a strategy first or just kind of wing it? which way would you tell people to go?
Okay, if you want to do this to build a brand, to create a front-facing thing, don't do any of the things I did. Learn from me, people. Learn from me. Except grow organically. But decide how often you want to upload. The best times to upload are Monday between 2 and 6 and Friday between 2 and 4. Those
YouTube, not the other platforms.
YouTube, exactly. I am just speaking to YouTube right now. Decide how often you want to upload. If you don't want to just sit and live stream, which I understand is not for everybody, someone was telling me the other day, they were like, how do you do it? Aren't you terrified of screwing up live? Because if you screw up live, man, I'm like, if I screwed up so bad live that I didn't like what was going on, I would simply mark the video private and then delete it later.
I screw up live all the time. It's fine. It's
but if you're going to make short produced videos, anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes, decide on how often you want to upload those. And then let's say you're going to do 1 video a week. Okay. Make 4 videos. That's a month worth of videos. Sandbag them, edit them, get them all done first. Maybe that's a couple of weeks worth of work for you. And then start uploading them. See what the reaction to the first, second videos are like, and just go from there. If people say, yeah, it's a good video, but like the jump cuts and the little meme, the little clips from The Office you put in there as memes and so on, that's not working for me. You've got time to go change your other videos up based on that. So if you're going to create uploaded content and not live streams, take time to sandbag a series of videos. If you're going to be uploading every day, odds are
don't do
it. I would say if you're going to be producing videos, at most a couple of times a week, unless you're doing newsy stuff like I've gotten caught up in, where stuff just comes to you and you sit here and say, Today, Wizards of the Coast said they are re-releasing a limited run of blah blah blah. That's cool. Here's the website where I read it. What do you guys think about it? That's how I do my news videos. So unless you're doing something like that, I would say keep it to 2 videos a week. Now, because that'll give you time to edit and polish, but sandbag. Don't start out and do 1 video and then cross your arms and go, well, let's see what the reaction to this is. Have a bunch stacked up and ready to go. And because a sample size of 1, Tim, you're a scientist, you know that don't work.
Does not.
But now, as far as equipment goes, I used to tell people this back in 2020 when Kung Flu hit us, that you have got, if you want to game online with your friends, you don't need a bunch of miniatures and a bunch of terrain and studio lights and a 4K camera and, a Xeon computer with 48 gigs. You need a good mobile phone. Most, even my cheap Android phone, if I put it on a nice clamped mount or even just propped it up and held it well and added like a $5 Bluetooth lavalier mic, that's good to get going with. That is good enough to get you started with. And if you're editing your videos and you want, but I want to cut away, I want to show other stuff, don't do that live. Just do your video and then come back and film the other stuff and then edit it all together. And you can do that with just a mobile phone. So those are my 2 biggest pieces of advice if you're going out there, particularly on YouTube, is don't overspend on equipment to start with, but do sandbag your videos. And the third kind of shadow piece of advice, get ready to take some criticism. Nobody will get it right out of the chute. Get ready to take some criticism. When I started getting big with the Wizards of the Coast stuff, there was one guy, and sir, wherever you are out there, I hope you got your blood pressure under control. But he would rant in the comments on the Wizards of the Coast YouTube videos that I was making when they were screwing things up. I don't care about this. I only care about Magic the Gathering. You keep showing up in my news feed. Nobody cares about D&D. This is garbage. When you want to report about... and I'm like, you can just not watch.
Yeah.
You can literally say, don't recommend this channel to me, YouTube, and they will stop.
Yeah, they will curate your feed.
But,
so I would...
Yeah. And the last thing about criticism... Don't let your heart be broken by thumbs down. Don't let your heart be broken by negative comments. Here's the secret sauce, guys. YouTube doesn't care. That is engagement. If somebody watches your video for 30 seconds of an hour-long discussion about the sinking of the Tirpitz, if they watch when they hit 31 seconds and they click thumbs down and they go in and they tell you that you're an idiot, that you are wrong about all your assumptions, yada, 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 YouTube's like, that's good. That's food. That you're getting responses, and we like you for that.
I had one of those the other day where I talked about a show that an actor was in who's got political things going on. And people went all political in the comments. And I'm like, I just liked the show. I didn't really care about any of that stuff. But it happens. You got to get ready for that kind of stuff and just let it go. I would add one thing to what you said. On YouTube especially, and this actually applies to Instagram as well. Short videos are where a lot of growth comes from. And I didn't believe that until very recently. I was like, no way, this is right. I kept looking at it, and then I tried it myself. When I mean YouTube Shorts, I mean there is a second section of YouTube that has short videos that are 9:16 frame instead of this wider frame. And the limit is 3 minutes. A lot of channel growth comes out of that short side, not the long video side. You'll grow out of the long video side, but aggressive growth comes from that short side. And I couldn't figure it out algorithmically, and I started trading emails with YouTube about it. And they're like, think about it like a preview to a movie. Are you going to go view a channel with a 20-minute video that you haven't seen a preview of? Like that's actually a reasonable point, right? So those short format videos are actually where it's driving a lot of growth. And if you want to show up in somebody's feed that you're not currently in, or you want to show up to people who aren't subscribers, you got a much better shot of doing it on the short side than you do on the long video side.
Mm-hmm.
So aggressive growth comes from putting together 30-second to 1 minute long shorts. And I would not go past 1.5 minutes, because on the short side, if people are watching YouTube shorts, a minute and a half is asking a lot. It is what it is. It doesn't sound like a lot, but try to say something. You're already like, oh, 90 seconds. What can you do in 90 seconds? It's hard. But you do something in 90 seconds or 60 seconds it down, and you'll see a lot of aggressive growth out of those videos. So if you are starting out, give that a shot also. And Bill, you might, I know you do some of that, but hey, it never hurts.
Yeah, I've been meaning to get back to shorts, and Tim is 100% right. They are great channel trailers. They can be just a great way. There is a YouTuber, and I'm not saying this positively or in support of this individual, but over the course of a few months, he spammed the hell out of YouTube Shorts. He was showing up in my feed constantly, and he doesn't even talk about the things that I key on. That like, he doesn't talk about car repairs, he doesn't talk about classic TTRPGs, he doesn't talk about computer repairs or classic video games, and yet he was constantly showing up in my shorts feed. And when I started digging into him a little more, like, why is this guy constantly showing up? He figured out how to game shorts.
They're magical.
Yeah.
Magical for growth. All right, so we're going to leave it there. If anybody has any questions, you can always reach me on any of the social platforms. I'm always around. Bill is, I think, at the Dungeon Delver on YouTube. And
yes,
what are you on Twitter? It's
_Dungeon Delver on Twitter. X.
Yeah, that's right. So, and if you want to reach him, just hit me and I'll link you over to his stuff too. So, he's pretty easy to find. So if you want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons or first edition RPGs or Gamma World, I think Friday's Gamma World, right?
That's right. We're playing Gamma World tonight.
RPG with a sci-fi twist.
Yes.
He's the channel to watch. So, you actually have a lot of interesting guests too, with like book authors and other stuff that are in the fantasy space.
I do. There's this guy out of the central Southwest who's he's kind of a Renaissance man. He's got some pretty good books. I've talked to him a couple times.
No. I was talking about Rose Estes. I mean, you've had Rose Estes. You've had some other pretty big names on too. So
I try, and especially in light of today's events, I think it's really important. I try to reach out to some of the classic D&D creators, because you got to remember, when we were kids, when we were 10, 12 years old, they were in their 30s and 40s creating D&D.
There's only really one left now from that era, which Rob Kuntz is still around, but he's one of the few.
That are still one of the very few.
Right, so, and I'm glad folks like Margaret Weiss are still out there writing books, and others. But you got to ask yourself, how many more years are we really going to have them out there doing this kind of stuff? So, thank you for preserving that history. But thank you everybody for coming by. Check out Bill's channel. He won't disappoint.